Okay, this video is going to describe how to read from and write to the worksheet. How to take Excel worksheets and write Visual Basic programs and exchange data between them. This will markedly increase the performance and the versatility of the Visual Basic programs that you write. And it will also improve the capabilities that Excel has by allowing you to use the Visual Basic programs with the Excel worksheets. So the way I'm going to do this is to walk you through a subroutine or a program that I wrote that goes through various different options for doing the reading and writing exchange between the Visual Basic programs and the worksheets. So the code is here, and I think just to save time, we're going to go right directly to the Visual Basic, and here's the main code that we'll use to go through these examples. It's called Sub Read and Write Program, and what this does when you call it is it makes these different variables here, and the only thing that this subroutine does is call other subroutines. So that thing there, that's a subroutine. This one, each one of these lines is a subroutine, and this term here gets passed into the subroutine and it gets passed back out. So this is how we will exchange data between the subroutine and the main program. Here, this is a variable called pressure, and you can see it's an array of 100 different values, and we then also exchange that data 10 for a particular purpose, and we'll see later on. Okay, so I'm going to put in a break there, and when I execute this, it will go and stop there. And I guess actually before we continue, let me just point out these variables up here. These are a variable called h and a variable called data name, and these are public variables, and so they're available to the entire program. Okay, so we're going to run this, and then it'll stop here, and when I execute this, it's going to go and execute that subroutine. So let's take a look before I do that. Go over here to read subs, and here's the read first cell subroutine. It goes from here down to there. Okay, so it's got a variety of different things that it does, and it will we also have put in a bunch of comments here that describe it, so you can read the comments, and it will describe the comments. Also say what it does. So I'm going to put in a break, and the first thing that I'm going to do though is reset this, take out that quote, and I'm going to put a stop right here. So this is the first line that should be executed, and I'm going to go back here to the main program, run it, stops here, and then press continue, and it stops here. So we're now in the subroutine called read first cell. This variable called first pressure has been passed into this subroutine, and right now that variable has a value of 0. So what we're going to do is use this command called cells, and cells with cells 1 will read the first column and first row in the worksheet, and it will do it in whatever worksheet is currently active. So if we go into Excel, we see that this is the currently active worksheet. That's the first column and first row, so cells will get the value that's in that cell, and it will write it into first pressure. So what I'll do is put in another break here and just execute this. Right now first pressure is 0. When I execute this, cells gets the value from 1 1 and writes it into first pressure, and you can see first pressure now has a value of 1. Okay, so easy enough. Let's go and change this around a little bit. I'm going to, I guess let's keep these stops here, but what I'm going to do is go to back to Excel and go to Output. Okay, so now this is the active sheet, and let's go back into Visual Basic. I'm going to run this again, and this is the main program. We're stopping here. I think I'm just going to take this breakpoint off so we don't stop here. We just go right into this subroutine. Okay, so now we were back here at this line. This is what we executed last time to get first pressure equal to 1. Now if we execute it this time, we get this error. So it says runtime error 13, which is kind of cryptic, type mismatch, which is kind of cryptic, but here's what it means. First pressure is a double precision variable. Cells 1 1 went and got the value, or got whatever is in the first column and first row, and it's this character string right here. And so you can't put a character string into a double precision variable because the double precision variable is only set up to take a number. So that's why you get this type mismatch error. So as you do this reading operation, reading off of the worksheet, this type mismatch error is something that is fairly common if you make this kind of a mistake. So I just wanted to give you a heads up about it, that this is the type of thing that error means. So what we'll do is put in a quote here. So that makes this a comment. And then I'm going to run this again. And now I'm repeating the same function call, and I'm going to take this value of cells at 1 1, and you can see what it is. It's output. And now I'm going to write it into this variable. Well, recall that this variable, it's a public variable, so it's available to all of the programs, all of the subroutines, and it's a string type. So we can take this word output and write it into this variable called data name, and we'll do that here. And so that works. Okay, so let's go and break this, take this off, and we'll put another quote right here, and we're going to change the active worksheet back to input, and then go back here and run this. Okay, so this should run now, and we'll go and so this runs. We have the same effect. So what this does is it says that just if we use just cells, then it works okay, so long as the right worksheet is active. But it'll be convenient to be able to direct the program to read off of a particular worksheet. So we can modify the cell function call by writing it like this: worksheets, and then the name of the worksheets, period, and then the cell call. And so this then is really the same as this, or the same as this line here, so long as the worksheet, well, basically then we're just requiring that it gets the value of the first column and first row from the worksheet called input. Okay, so we'll try running that, and first pressure is 1, data name is also 1 because it's the same location. All right, so that expands our capabilities a little bit. And now what we want to do is read in the next row. And so we expand this function call here a little bit more, and we change this from 1 to 2. So this is telling what row to read off of, and this is which column. And then we also add on this dot value. So if we execute this, and now I'm going to use the step over, Shift F8. So we execute second pressure, or execute this line, and this string here, this essentially this is well, this is behaving really like a subroutine. Let's just call it a command. This command takes the value from this worksheet at this cell location, takes the value, writes it into that variable. We go do it again, and I'm just going to use the keystrokes, Shift F8. We execute this one, third pressure, and so on. So this is the third row. If we go back here to the worksheet, we see we're reading this one. This is column 1, row 1, row 1, row 2, row 3, and row 4, and so on. So that's what's happening as we change this number. Of course, we can also change the column number. So here, this is first row, second column. And if we hit Shift F8, we'll execute that. And that gives us the first time. So this is the time column, and it gives us that value. Okay, so that's all for that's the only thing that this read first cell subroutine does, but it's gotten us started with how to use the cells and the worksheets and the value command and how to string them together to get values from particular cells on a particular. Okay, so now we're going to extend this, and we'll see how to read an entire column at once. So you should go back to the main program, put a breakpoint here at this next line, the read column 1 subroutine, and then we'll press this arrow and we'll execute it. And basically what's happened is this subroutine was executed, and it did its thing, but we didn't really track it, so it just skips, it just does it and we don't really notice. So now we put a breakpoint here, and I'm going to go back into read subs. Here's the subroutine read column 1, and I'm going to put a break here, and we'll execute it. So here's what's going on. Read column 1, and we've got two things, pressure L and num press L, that get passed into or out of this subroutine. And so if we go along, read about what's happening, but basically we're going to dimension this variable as a integer, and then we're going to use a for next loop. And what we're going to do is really just take this routine that we did up here and do it this many times using a for next loop. And in this case, pressure L, we call it a variant. This gives us flexibility as to what the data type is. But when we write it this way, pressure L parentheses counter, that means that pressure L is an array, a one-dimensional array, and counter is the index for that array. Okay, so what's going to happen, we start off with counter equal 1 when we first execute this. So if I press F8, now counter is equal to 1. So this is an index on the array, and counter also appears over here. Okay, so previously we just had numbers here, but now we have a variable that we're going to increment. So initially this is equal to 1, and so this is going to get first row, first column, and write it into the first location in pressure, L. So let's put a watch on this guy. And I'm going to hit F8. And so this read that first point, that 1, and then we're going to go and execute it again. Now counter's 2, the row is 2, and we have 1.1 and 1.2. And so on. Okay, so we're going to do this 10 times because that's the number that we passed into this subroutine. We do it 10 times, and we'll read 10 values, and then we'll be done. Okay, so now it's the 10th point, and we're done. And let's see what we've got here. There's the data that are in the array, and so we've read from there to there with this subroutine. And now we're done, and we'll keep going. We're back here now into the main subroutine. Okay, so I think it's important to check out what's happened. We've executed this, and we've executed this. And when we executed this, we ended up with a value of first pressure that gets passed back into the main subroutine. So first P has a value of 1, and this array pressure has now it'll be filled with the variables that we read using this subroutine. So we'll put a watch on there and check that out. So there they are. All right, and if we also take a look here at pressure L, that was the name of this variable within the subroutine read column 1. But remember, that's a local variable. So that variable name is only active when this read column 1 subroutine is being executed. Once it stops being executed, that variable name is no longer used, and the contents of that variable are put into a variable called pressure. And this is an array that's declared right here. Okay, that's a really important concept, because now this variable called pressure is something that's active in this part of the program, and we can use it for whatever purpose we want. Okay, so what I'll do now is execute this one called read any column row 1. And we can see there's more information that we pass into this routine, and it'll give us a bit more control than the subroutine that we just executed. So I'm going to go and put a break in it, and let me see, we're going to execute this one. I think we just go and press that. Yeah. Okay, so read any column row 1. Here's what this is going to do. We're going to have these 4 things that get passed in. These are variable names, and what I tried to do is make these variables have meaningful names. So we're going to read any column in row 1, and we're going to end up writing the results into this data. We're going to read it off of this worksheet, and we're going to read this column, and we're going to read this many rows. Okay, so if we go back to the main program, we see when we called this, we had this is the variable that we'll write the data into. This is the worksheet, and 1 and 10 are written into these variables, this one called this column, and read these rows. Okay, so when this gets executed, this column will be 1 and we'll read these many rows. So this is just really an extension of the previous one. And let me see, the change is right here. Here we put in a number 1 and we read off of that column. Now we have this be a variable, and so right now it has a value of 1. So this is going to do exactly the same as this one, but the difference is that we now have the flexibility to control what column we read from by putting a different number here, and essentially that amounts to putting a different number right here in the main program. So it gives us more flexibility. If we use this guy, then I think what I'll do is let me just put a stop here and run this. And so that got executed, and we should now have pressure. It should be filled with these variables. And so that's good. That's what we want. And now what I'm going to do here is call this again, but see how I've put a number 2 right there? That's going to allow me to repeat this, and for this array I'm going to take the numbers that are in column 2, take the first 10 of them and write it into this array called time. So I'm just going to, well, okay, got that break in there. I'm not going to go and step through this because it's pretty self-explanatory, I think. What we'll do is we just executed it, and let's just check what happened. And we'll put a watch on this guy. Okay, so we went through, read column 2, and here are the numbers, and it looks like 0.095, 0.18, and there it is. Okay, so that routine just read that column, first 10 rows. Okay, well, let's go and give this a little more flexibility yet. This one, read any column. Again, we'll go and put a break in here. Put break, run it, come into here. All right. So this is just taking another step. It's all the same as the previous one, except instead of, well, we've added this. In the previous one, we started at row 1. So on the worksheet, we always had to start right here. But we might want to start reading right here, right at that location, and read that data. So we just want to have the extra flexibility to be able to do that. And we give it this information by this parameter called start row. Okay, so now what we do is execute this. We still have a for next loop. We're using this variable called row, and we go and we start at that row. We start at the row called start row, and then we go to start row plus this many rows. So this is how we modify the first part of the for next loop to start at a particular row and go a certain number of rows. This line here is essentially the same as the one that we had before, with one slight difference. Up here, this is our array index, so it's starting at 1 and going to however many rows we use. And that's the way we want to do it. But when we used this routine up here, we started at row 1, so the counter, the thing that we use, the variable we use for the array index was the same as the one that we use for the row index. And here we've just decoupled them. This is still the array index, but this is telling us what row to read out of. Okay, so that's a little bit of a difference. And what it means is that we have to just use this array index separately. We can't use this for next routine to do both the array index and the row index. So the way to do that is to just use this counter equals counter plus 1. That does the array index, and separately it's separate from the value of row. So let's just go and step through this. If we press F8, then the first thing that we'll do is start row. We'll have row equals start row, and counter equals 1. And as we step through it, then counter now gets incremented by 1, so it equals 2. And when we execute this line, now row equals 2. Okay, so we've just given this little bit of flexibility in how we increment these different variables. So I'm going to just break out of this now. Well, let's go and run it, and I'm going to take that stop out and go back to the main program and put a break right here and run to there. Okay, so what I've done now is used this command to read in pressure in this column, this start row, and this number of points. And so here's an example where I just started from row number 3. So if we look at what pressure is now, I guess if we go back up to here, you can see that I started in row number 3, which is right there. Okay, so what this does is just gives you some more flexibility. Now, I think that this routine right here, read any column, that we just looked at, this gives you a pretty good amount of flexibility, versatility. So this is a subroutine that I keep and just copy it and paste it into my different programs and use it for reading in columns. I can read in a single point, I can read in a whole column, I can read a column from any location in the worksheet. So it has a great deal of flexibility, and I can do all of it by just calling it here in a program and then adjusting what I write here. So the power of this is that once I write this, I never have to go in and mess around with this again. I put it in a module so that the program can see it, and then within the main part of the program, I can use it to read read data off of the worksheet. Okay, we just have 2 more subroutines that we need to look at. Go back to main. We're here now at this one called read array. So read any column. I think it's quite clear what that does. That's what we just saw. Now read array, it should be pretty clear that that's what that's going to do. It's going to read the array. And so let's take a look. We've got these guys that get passed into the subroutine. H, that is up here. That's a 2-dimensional array. H data, that's the name of the worksheet that has the data in it. And then, it's not quite clear what this is, but we'll check out the subroutine and see. So I'm going to go here to read array. So this is the variable that will be passed back out of the subroutine, the name of the worksheet, and then the starting column, starting row, and the number of columns and number of rows. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, and we'll execute it. So this worksheet is H data, and start column is 1, start row is 1, number of columns is 10, and number of rows is 20. Okay, so if we go back to main, you can see that's where these numbers came from. And if we go to the worksheet, there's H data, and there's 1, 1, and there are, I guess, 10 columns and 20 rows. So it's going to read in this block of data. And the way that it's going to work is by using a nested loop. So right here, that's essentially the same as what we did up here in read any column. A single for next loop with an incrementer, a counter, to keep track of the array index. So right here we have the same thing. What I've done here is taken this line and I've done it in 2 steps. So hopefully that's straightforward. This reads the data off of the worksheet and I write it into that variable, and then I take that variable and write it into this 2-dimensional array, and then here's that index. Okay, so essentially this is really just the same as what we saw up here. Then the addition is that we have another loop, another for next loop. The inner for next loop reads from the first column to the last column, and then this outer for next loop reads each row. And we have an index for the rows that gets counted here, and then these are the locations within the array that will be used to refer to the particular position within the array. Okay, this here starts off the index j at the right value, and each time through the loop we have to reset the index for I. So that's really all that it does. And we can step through and watch it go, and so now it's just doing this inner loop and incrementing column. So it's reading in the first row and these columns. So let's check and confirm that that's what it's doing. So we'll go here to this data, put a watch on it, and expand it. So there's the first point, and there's the second point. Third point is in this set. So the way this is arranged is that this is going to be the first column of data right there. That's the way the watch on an array is set up. So we'll continue to read this in, and let's see, we've got n column is 10, so we'll go, there's 9, 10, now we should be done. So we step out of that loop, and the j index was 1, and now we execute that and it becomes 2. So now we'll do it for the second column. So we go through and read in the second column, and so on for all the rest of the column, all 20 columns. So let's put a break here. It's kind of tedious to step through all of that. Put a break there, and then we've executed it, and then you really need to check and make sure that these routines do what you think they do. So what we'll what we'll do, we're reading in the H data, so I'm going to collapse that, and so these are the data that we just read in. So this is the first column here through 20, and this is the next column, starts at 5 and then 3.90 and 3.97. Let's go back and check. Yep, 5, 3.9, 3.97. So that looks good. And we can go and check the rest of these. That's the third column. So we've successfully read the data off the worksheet, and now we hit F8 and go back. This is now in the main program, and we can check out this variable called H. So put a watch on it. And let's just pick that first column. There it is. So we've called this read array, we've routine, we've given it this information, and it has successfully pulled this information off of the worksheet, and now we can use it. Okay, so fair enough. The read from data range, that's something that you can check out that routine on your own. I don't use that one too much, but you can see how that works. The last thing I want to show you is this guy, write any column. So we're going to step into it, and it's located here in write subs, and onto it. Okay, so write any column. Here's the header. This header, it's the same header as read any column. This routine works the same as read any column, except it's going to go from Visual Basic back to the worksheet. And so here's how it does it. In the previous routine, we had a statement that said this data equals this stuff. Okay? Now we say take this data, take this value, and write it to this location. So if we really just view this equal sign as an assignment operator, where it says take the value that you get at this location, the value that we get when from this data, and assign it to the value at this location in the worksheet. Okay, so it's really just the opposite of what we did when we were reading from the worksheet. In that case, we took the value from the worksheet that was obtained using this statement and wrote it into the value, or into this location, which was our variable. Now when we're writing, it's really a very nice setup, because we just swap the either side of the equal sign, and this will then take the information and put it at the location that we want in the worksheet. Okay, so that gives you now the capability of reading columns from the worksheet, reading arrays, and writing columns back out. We could also have a routine that was write any array, and we would do, all we would need to do is go here to read array and swap these around, swap these back and forth. Instead of going from the worksheet to this data, we would go from this data to the worksheet. It's a very simple arrangement. Okay, so now you know how to read and write from the worksheet, and what I want to do is have you guys practice this. So the assignment is to, if you go back to the worksheet, we've got a sheet called Your Input and Your Output. And so what I want you to do is use the read any column to read these columns here. You can read them one at a time. And then write the results there, and use the read array and read this array, read these data and write it into an array, and then write the results back out in this location. Okay, so feel free to use the subroutines that are in this worksheet. That's fine. I would also then put them someplace where you can use them later on. And what you'll need to do, though, is to start your own subroutine, your own kind of master subroutine that calls the reading and the writing subroutines separately. And so what I want to be able to do is have you guys show me, and I don't want hard copy output. What I want to do is have you guys show me the Excel subroutines, where what we'll do is open this up and we'll run it, and the data will appear. The data that we have here will be read in and then will be written back out right here. Okay, so this will be this homework will be graded as an active Excel file.